Thank you.
Those aren't those the two stories that you sent to me?
Yes. So the thing that I used the video multimedia is sort of to explain what I did, but then I realized it's not a good forum for showing what people actually produce. So there are copies of two of the stories, the two young women who spoke, Liz McClurg and Jessica LaFleur. Their stories are part of the handouts that are on the table, right. So you can see what they created.
And also the set of post.
Yes, the models that I used that I started passing out to show people, here's how you could do a complete story short, just in a few paragraphs. So think about writing it like this.
How did this experience change your own writing?
I think I sort of, after being in the business for so long, I've been doing this for a couple decades now, I think you learn by instinct what the narrative arc is, but I don't think I'd ever really thought of it. So I find sometimes when I'm writing a story, like when I was trying to figure out how to do this, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to just apply my little principle to this piece and explain how I came up with the idea and open that way and just use that as a way in to tell the story of how I made this teaching experiment unfold. But I think maybe I'm a little more conscious of it now as I work. I don't know that I think as a writer, my interest is in feature writing and telling people's stories, and that's been my interest for a long time. So given that I've already had that bent, maybe it just reinforced it as a good idea.
Do you have any, evidence is the right word, but any experiences from Ghana that indicate that those folks followed through and started writing stories of this type?
Internet connections are really tough in Ghana. And people don't, even in the newsroom, use the internet like we do. And one of the interesting things about going to Ghana is that we realized I did by giving the presentations, that there's not this same exchange of info we have. When we're curious about something, we just look on Google and I can watch a video, or I don't necessarily need to have someone standing in front of me to explain something, although it can be helpful sometimes. But they're still more cut off because there isn't that connection. So I sent emails out, and then I wrote to the director of the program who invited me over there, and he said, oh yeah, internet is so bad over there, people just aren't as we are with email. So I haven't heard, but the pictures you saw were of reporters, and then the next day I worked with editors, and I didn't make the editors go out and do man-on-the-street interviews, but I did pass out those same Washington Post stories and use that to provoke conversation, and people read through them and picked their favorites and talked about why they liked it. And at one point, an editor actually stood up and said, I really think we should be doing this more. This is really interesting, and we're not doing it, and I think we need to think about change. But so that's as much as I have. I have not heard since then from people.
And I'm curious about how they move to embrace both personal first-person feature writing with on-the-street media collection is seen within journalism in relation to the sort of citizen journalists who are there at the beginning of a story and have their camera out and get something, and they're filling blogs with. What is it that when you talk to young journalists, what do you say, this is why what you're doing is different?
That's a great question.
From what else people can find online?
It's interesting. Well, the first way I want to answer this is, to do this project, I wanted to learn this software that I didn't know how to use, which is called Final Cut. So last semester I had a tutorial in Final Cut, 2 hours a week, once a week, and it just wasn't enough. So in the end, I had to come here and have this thing assembled with a software program I didn't know how to use. So I found a young reporter at one of the blogging networks who, I wrote the script, I gave him all the pieces, and he assembled this for me. And he just graduated as a journalism major and is now working for this blogger network, and runs out and shoots video, comes back and puts together these little 1-minute stories about maybe people doing a protest down by City Hall, which he showed me. And so he thought this was interesting. He thought the narrative arc was interesting, and he thought it was also a novelty to have to weave in info from all different places. Normally what he does is he'll go shoot an event, come back, and then put it online. So this idea of having different video, different audio, and assembling into something he'd never tried before.
So a wider source network, or building that into your craft.
But what was discouraging to me is that he the way he pays the rent is he works at the Apple store. And he gets all kinds of great info about how to use the computer and the software, so that's fantastic. And then he, on the side for fun, works as this reporter. And I said, so how much do you make a story? And he said, well, $40. And I said, $40? He's like, well, that's a lot. You know, I figure it's an hour down to do the interview, an hour to cut it up and put it online, so I'm making $15 an hour. And I just thought, this is really, I said, you should be asking for $100 a story, minimum. But it's a tricky time, and it just made me realize, where are these young journalists going to get jobs that actually pay the rent? It's going to be hard on a $40 story.
Well, I wanted to, because you mentioned to me on the phone the other day that your ability to do multimedia stories, or to do your term transmedia journalism, I think that's a cool term, but it was problematic in that it's not easy to get your newspaper to run those kinds of stories.
Well, they want multimedia, but really all the online is not bringing in the revenue. We're still making money from print. So the newspaper is reluctant to take someone like me who can write print stories for the print edition, which is where we make our money, and send me over to the corner to do multimedia stuff, which is sort of the gravy. So we've got one guy who produces video and does fantastic work. And he'll put together a script, like on the Polish story I did. He did the script, I did the narration, I edited some of the script, and then he'll weave that in with the video he shoots and some still photos. But as far as them needing me as a multimedia producer, I'm more valuable to them producing text. So what I try and do is, when there are opportunities to weave in a bit of multimedia, like when I had a story talking about a woman hearing a song, and then I said, okay guys, can we make a button so we can hear the song since we've got this stuff? Or I did a story about a new animation program, a bachelor's degree in animation. So I went in the lab and I watched the kids. They showed me all their projects, and then that was part of my story. So as I'm writing the story, I say so-and-so is showing how making a ball go in the air, go over a plane and explode in front of a building. So you click that and you can actually watch the video. And so that was one way that I was able to just incorporate this multimedia thinking that maybe I wouldn't have been even thinking this way if I hadn't come here on the fellowship.
How do you define a transmedia journal?
We came up with it, we made that word up, Jennifer did, as a way to show someone who could go from print to multimedia, someone who was thinking of more than just print. At first we thought multimedia journalist, which didn't seem right to me because it wasn't my main thing, whereas writing is. But trans was this idea of being able to do more than one, thinking about multimedia, being able to produce multimedia.
How much does the newspaper, I guess, point out the fact that their experience can be enhanced by going online to experience something, like hear her song, and this, I mean, I just think if people thought that perhaps they were missing something or they weren't getting the full thing, they'd be more apt to sign up for a membership. They'd see what they were missing.
I think they do it sometimes, but maybe it's inconsistent. But I know that they are referring people online to see a video or see something they can't see in the story. They're working on it. It's slow. You have departments that have always done things a certain way, and so the transition of doing things differently is a gradual process.